I'm Catherine Brooks, and I'm 32 years old. I showed up at the family party by the pool, ready to relax with the kids, when I overheard my mother directing the food line. "Your sister's good kids eat first," she said sharply, handing full plates to her other grandchildren, while mine got pushed to the side with just some leftover breadcrumbs. My boys sat quietly by the water's edge, picking at what little was left, their faces dropping as they watched the others dig in. Then my father leaned in and added, "They need to learn their place." The words hit like a punch, but I didn't react right then. I just gathered my children and walked out without a word. 5 minutes later, everything changed in ways they never expected. Over the next few weeks, what I uncovered about their real motives and what I decided to do left them scrambling in ways that exposed years of hidden truths. If you've ever sensed something off in your own family dynamics, you won't want to miss how this unfolded. It might just make you rethink everything. If you've ever dealt with family favoritism that cut deep, smash that like button and subscribe for more real stories that expose the truth and deliver that satisfying turnaround. Let me take you back to how this pattern began. For the past 8 years, since my marriage, I'd slowly become the main financial lifeline for my family without realizing how entrenched it had gotten. It started innocently enough when I landed my first teaching job right out of college at 24. My mother, Patricia Ward, called one evening saying the roof on their Decatur house needed urgent repairs after a storm, and insurance wouldn't cover the full amount. "Catherine, we hate to ask, but it's just a few $100s, she said, her voice carrying that familiar mix of worry and expectation. I wired the money the next day, feeling good about helping out, as my salary grew with promotions in the Atlanta school district. The requests evolved. My father, Anthony Ward, would mention car troubles for my sister, Morgan Hayes, who worked retail and struggled as a single mom. "She needs reliable transportation for her shifts," he'd explain, and I'd cover $1,000 for a used sedan, thinking it was temporary. Then came medical bills, Dad's knee surgery copay. Mom's dental work always presented as one-time emergencies that somehow multiplied over time. I paid for home improvements, like updating their kitchen to make gatherings easier, or helping Morgan with rent during slow sales seasons. My husband, Joshua Brooks, and I both had stable careers, he as a software engineer downtown, and we managed. But the imbalance started showing when we bought our first home in Midtown Atlanta. No one offered to help with moving or even showed up for the housewarming. Yet when Morgan's air conditioning broke during a Georgia heatwave, I sent $2,000 without question. Joshua pointed it out gently once, saying, "They seem to call only when something costs money." I brushed it off, defending them as family who expressed care differently, perhaps through those occasional holiday cards. What I didn't track was how the amounts escalated with my bonuses. A $5,000 roof replacement turned into regular contributions for their mortgage when Dad retired early. Morgan's temporary loans for her kids' school supplies became annual expectations. In total, without realizing, I'd funneled significant sums their way, always justified by their stories of tight budgets and bad luck. My friend Sydney Norton, an accountant I'd known since college, noticed during one of our coffee meetups. "Catherine, you're essentially subsidizing their lifestyle," she warned after I mentioned another request. "Have you added up what you've given?" I laughed it off then. But her words lingered. Sydney had helped me with taxes before and saw the patterns in my records transfers that started at $50 here and there but ballooned to thousands quarterly. Looking back, I see how they groomed me into this role. Mom would praise my success, saying, "We're so proud of how far you've come," right before dropping a need. Dad added guilt with lines like, "Family sticks together through hard times." And Morgan played the struggling sister card, reminding me of our childhood bond I love them, so saying no felt impossible. But as the requests grew bolder covering Morgan's vacation one year, because she deserved a break, doubts crept in. Why were their emergencies always solvable by my checkbook? Yet when Joshua and I needed a babysitter for date night, everyone suddenly had conflicts. The real eye-opener came when I confided more in Sydney. She ran some quick numbers from my bank statements and showed me the progression from occasional help to what amounted to a second income for them. "This isn't sustainable," she said, "and it's not fair to your own family." I started questioning if their appreciation was genuine or tied to the money. Deep down, I sensed something off. But I pushed it aside, focusing on being the reliable daughter and sister. Little did I know, that party would force me to confront it all. That day at the party unfolded exactly as I'd feared. I arrived at Piedmont Park around noon, the sun beating down on the crowded pool area where families splashed and laughed. Matthew and John raced ahead toward the water, excited for the games their cousins had mentioned. But as I set down our bags near the picnic tables, I noticed the division right away. Morgan's kids, Brianna and Kyle, were already in the thick of things, diving for toys in the shallow end with a group of neighborhood children. My boys tried to join, waving eagerly, but the other kids exchanged glances and swam away, leaving them standing awkwardly at the edge. "Boys, come help with the snacks," Mom called from the grill station, her tone casual but pointed. I watched as she loaded plates with burgers and chips for Brianna and Kyle, who dried off and sat at the main table under the shade. Matthew and John approached hungry from the heat, but Dad handed them plain bread rolls from a side bag. "Here you go. That's enough for now," he said. Turning back to chat with neighbors, the boys nibbled quietly by the fence, their eyes fixed on the full spread everyone else enjoyed. I knelt down to their level. "What's going on with the games?" John shrugged, his small shoulders slumping. "They said we're not on the team," Matthew added softly. "Brianna told us to wait our turn, but then they started without us." I looked over and saw Morgan scrolling her phone at the table, not intervening as her kids dominated the activities. The separation felt deliberate, like an unspoken rule everyone followed except us, approaching the group. I kept my voice steady. "Mom, why are the boys eating separate from the others?" Patricia Ward glanced up from arranging drinks. "Oh, Catherine, there's limited space at the table, and we figured they'd be fine with something simple. Kids their age don't need much," Dad chimed in, wiping his hands on a towel. "It's about fitting in with the crowd here. Some activities are better suited for certain groups." Morgan looked up briefly. "Yeah, the neighborhood kids have their own dynamics. It's easier this way to avoid any awkwardness." Their words hung heavy in the humid air. "Awkwardness like what?" I pressed, feeling heat rise in my chest. Mom hesitated, then lowered her voice. "You know, with how things look, not everyone is comfortable mixing in social settings like this." Dad nodded agreement. "We're just being realistic about how these events work in our community. Better they understand early," Morgan added. "My kids blend right in. But yours, it's different. We don't want any uncomfortable questions from the other parents." The implications stung, confirming what I'd long suspected but ignored. My children weren't just sidelined, they were deliberately excluded because of their mixed heritage, treated as outsiders at their own family gathering. I forced a smile for the boys' sake, but inside, anger simmered as the afternoon dragged on, with Matthew and John relegated to watching from afar. I stepped away to a quiet spot by the trees and pulled out my phone. I dialed Sydney. "Hey, it's happening right now at the park," I whispered. "They're treating the boys like afterthoughts, saying it's about social realities." Sydney's voice came through calm but firm. "Document what you can. We talked about this. It's time to reassess everything." Want me to run those numbers again when you get back? Her quick advice grounded me, reminding me I wasn't alone in seeing through the facade. By the time the sun dipped lower, the boys' disappointment was palpable, their energy drained not from play but from feeling left out. I knew then that this wasn't just one bad day, it was the breaking point. By the time we left the park, my mind was racing. I drove Matthew and John straight to a small Southern-style diner on Peachtree Street, a spot Joshua and I often went to when we needed to talk things through away from home. The kids settled into a booth with milkshakes, quietly coloring on paper placemats, while I waited for Joshua to meet us after his shift. The warm smell of fried chicken and biscuits filled the air. But I barely noticed. My thoughts stuck on what had happened by the pool. Sydney agreed to join us after I texted her a quick summary of the afternoon's events, her earlier advice still echoing in my head. Joshua slid into the booth across from me, his brow furrowed as I recounted the scene at Piedmont Park. Mom told the boys they'd be fine with bread rolls while Morgan's kids got the full spread, I said, keeping my voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. Then Dad said it was about fitting in with the community, and Morgan backed them up, talking about avoiding awkward questions. Joshua's jaw tightened. He'd always been patient with my family, but I could see the frustration building. That's not just unfair, he said. It's deliberate. They're singling out our boys because of their heritage. Sydney arrived shortly after, pulling up a chair with her laptop already open. I've been telling you for years they lean on you too much, she said, her tone matter-of-fact but gentle. She tapped a few keys and pulled up a spreadsheet she'd made from my past bank statements. Let's put it in perspective. Over 8 years, you've sent them $127,000 mortgage payments, car loans, medical bills, even that vacation for Morgan. It's not pocket change, Catherine. I stared at the numbers, the reality sinking in like a weight. Joshua leaned over, scanning the totals. That's more than our down payment on the house, he said quietly. The conversation shifted to deeper patterns. Joshua reminded me of a dinner years ago at my parents' house in Decatur, where Mom had asked if we'd considered compatibility when we decided to have kids. At the time, I'd brushed it off as a clumsy comment about our careers, but now it felt like a veiled jab at our mixed-race family. Sydney nodded, adding, I've seen this before with clients. People hide their biases behind practical excuses, but it's still there. They've been comfortable taking your money while treating your kids as less than. I felt a knot in my stomach, not just from anger but from guilt for not seeing it sooner. I thought I was helping family, I admitted, glancing at Matthew and John, who were now giggling over their drawings. But I've been enabling this. Joshua reached for my hand. You didn't know because you trusted them. We both did. But we can't let this slide, not when it's hurting our boys. Sydney closed her laptop and leaned forward. If you're serious about stopping this, we need a plan. You're on the hook for their mortgage because you co-signed years ago. That's leverage. But it also means you need to act carefully to protect your own finances. She outlined steps: contact the bank to clarify my obligations, review any joint accounts, and freeze further transfers. Joshua agreed, his voice firm. This isn't just about the money, it's about making it clear we won't tolerate this treatment. As we wrapped up, I felt a shift inside me. The blind loyalty I'd clung to for years was crumbling, replaced by a resolve to protect my family, my real family. Matthew looked up from his sketch and asked, Mom, can we go swimming with everyone next time? His innocent question steeled my decision. We were done being pushed aside. Before heading home, I needed undeniable proof. The party at Piedmont Park was still in full swing as I lingered near a cluster of bushes by the picnic area, close enough to hear but hidden from view. The crowd's chatter and kids' laughter covered my steps as I edged closer to where Mom, Dad, and Morgan stood, their voices carrying over the clink of soda cans. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and held my breath, hoping to catch something that would confirm what I'd suspected all along. Morgan was mid-sentence, her tone sharp. Catherine's boys stick out too much around here. It's easier to keep them separate so we don't have to explain anything to the neighbors. Mom sighed, her voice low but clear. It's not personal, it's practical. People notice differences. And we can't afford to lose our place in this community, Dad added. Besides, Catherine's always been generous. She'll keep helping as long as we need her to. Those kids of hers, though they're leftovers in a setting like this, my heart pounded so hard I thought they'd hear it. Leftovers. My boys. Matthew and John. Reduced to a dismissive label while they relied on my money to prop up their lives. I gripped the phone tighter, the recording capturing every word. Morgan went on, oblivious. Her payments cover my car and half my rent. If she stops, I'm sunk. But she won't. She's too loyal. Dad chuckled. Exactly. We've got her locked in with the house payments too. I stepped back, my hands shaking as I stopped the recording. Their words weren't just cruel, they were calculated, exposing a truth I'd been too naive to face. They didn't just marginalize my children, they saw my generosity as a guarantee, a tool to keep their comfortable lives intact. The realization burned, replacing any lingering doubt with raw anger. I slipped away from the bushes and got the boys into the car, their faces still heavy from the day's exclusion. As we pulled out of the park, I called Sydney. I recorded them, I said, my voice steady despite the rage. They called my kids leftovers and admitted they're banking on my money. Sydney didn't hesitate. Send me the audio. I'll back it up and go over your accounts tonight. We'll make sure you're protected before you pull the plug. By the time we reached our midtown house, I was already on the phone with my bank, navigating their automated system to freeze any pending transfers to my parents' account. The customer service rep confirmed the last automatic payment for their Decatur mortgage had gone through that morning, but I canceled the next one, effective immediately. Then I dialed the lender for their house, where I'd co-signed years ago. I need to clarify my obligations on a loan, I told the agent, who promised to send paperwork to review my status. Sydney texted as I tucked the boys into bed. Audio's saved. You're clear to remove yourself from their mortgage if you act fast. Call me tomorrow. I sat in the dark, replaying their words in my head, each one fueling my resolve. This wasn't just about stopping the money, it was about dismantling the system they'd built on my family's expense. They thought they had me figured out. But they were about to learn how wrong they were. The next morning, I woke up with a clear purpose. I sat at the kitchen table in our midtown Atlanta home, coffee in hand, while Matthew and John played in the living room. Their laughter a stark contrast to the weight of what I was about to do. Sydney came over early, bringing her laptop to finalize the steps we'd outlined at the diner. She opened a file with my financial records and pointed to the mortgage agreement for Mom and Dad's Decatur house. You co-signed. But you're not legally obligated to keep paying, she said. The lender confirmed you can remove your name, which cuts their safety net. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and determination. I called the lender again, this time speaking to a senior agent. I'm withdrawing my support from the loan on the Decatur property, I told her, providing my details and referencing the paperwork from the night before. The agent explained the process would take a few days but assured me I'd be off the hook once the forms were processed. Sydney double-checked my bank accounts, ensuring no automatic transfers remained active. You've already stopped the monthly payments, she confirmed. They'll notice soon, by noon. My phone lit up with Mom's name. Her voice was frantic when I answered. Catherine. The bank just sent a notice about a missed payment. What's going on? I kept my tone calm but firm. I'm done covering your mortgage. I've been carrying you for years. And it stops now. she gasped, then pleaded. We can't afford this house without you. Please. We'll figure something out. I didn't budge. You made choices at the party. My boys aren't your leftovers. Morgan called next, her voice sharp with panic. You can't just cut me off. Catherine, I need that money for my car payment, or I can't get to work. I reminded her of the thousands I'd sent for her car, her rent, her kids' expenses. You took my support while sidelining my children, I said. Find another way. She tried guilt, bringing up our childhood and how I'd always been the successful one. I hung up, my resolve unshaken. Sydney stayed through the afternoon, helping me draft a formal letter to the lender to solidify my withdrawal. She also suggested I notify my bank of potential disputes, just in case my family tried anything desperate. They're used to relying on you, she said. This is going to hit them hard. She wasn't wrong. Within days, Morgan texted that her car had been repossessed after she missed a payment. She was now taking the bus to her retail job, a reality check that felt like the first ripple of consequences. Dad left a voicemail later that day, his tone gruff but unsteady. Catherine, we need to talk this through as a family. You're making a mistake. I didn't call back. Their words at the party, caught on my recording, echoed in my mind proof they saw my generosity as a given while dismissing my boys. I looked at Matthew and John, now building a fort with blankets, oblivious to the storm I'd set in motion. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about drawing a line they'd crossed too many times. Over the next few weeks, their desperation surfaced. I was wiping down the counter in our Midtown Atlanta kitchen when my phone buzzed with a string of texts from Mom. Catherine, we're struggling. The bank's threatening foreclosure. Can you help just this once? Her messages were long, filled with apologies and promises to make things right. I read them silently, my jaw tight, and didn't respond. The recording from the park, those words about my boys being leftovers, played in my mind like a loop, anchoring my resolve. A few days later, Dad showed up unannounced at the Southern-style diner on Peachtree Street where Joshua and I often ate. He slid into the booth across from me, his face drawn, hands clasped tightly. Catherine, we need to sort this out, he said, his voice low but urgent. The house is at stake. You don't want your parents on the street, do you? I sipped my coffee, keeping my expression neutral. You made it clear where my boys stand in your eyes, I said. I'm not bailing you out anymore. He leaned forward, insisting. We didn't mean it like that. It's just how things are in our circle. You're taking this too personally. I shook my head, unmoved, and told him to leave. Morgan escalated things next. She called repeatedly, leaving voicemails that swung between pleading and accusing. I lost my part-time retail job because I couldn't focus. Catherine, she said in one, her voice cracking. I'm drowning without your help. How can you do this to Brianna and Kyle? I listened to each message, but her attempts to guilt me fell flat. She'd stood by while my boys were sidelined, and now she expected me to save her again. I deleted the voicemails without replying. Sydney checked in regularly, ensuring I stayed on track. She'd confirmed with the lender that my name was officially off the Decatur house loan, freeing me from any legal ties. They're feeling the pressure now, she said during a call. Your parents listed their house for sale last week. It's a buyer's market in Atlanta. They'll take a loss. I nodded, unsurprised. The real estate notices I'd seen online showed their Decatur property priced below market, a sign of their rush to avoid foreclosure. By the end of the month, Mom sent another text. This time, a single line, "Please, Catherine, I'm begging you." I stared at it for a moment, picturing her in the house she'd always prided herself on. But the memory of Matthew and John, sitting by that pool with bread rolls while her good kids ate first, hardened my heart. I didn't answer. Morgan, meanwhile, had started borrowing money from friends, according to a mutual acquaintance, but her social circle was shrinking as her financial strain grew. Joshua supported me through every call and text, reminding me why we'd made this choice. "They built their lives on your generosity," he said one evening as we watched the boys play in our backyard. "Now they're facing the consequences of their actions." I felt a pang of sadness for the family I'd once idealized, but it was overshadowed by clarity. Their attempts to negotiate only proved they valued my money over my children's dignity. I wasn't going back. By the following months, the fallout settled into place. Mom and Dad moved out of their Decatur house after it sold at a loss, forced to rent a cramped one-bedroom apartment in an outer Atlanta suburb. A neighbor from their old street mentioned they'd stopped hosting their usual community barbecues. Their social standing diminished without the big house to anchor it. Morgan, struggling to keep up, took on late-night shifts at a warehouse to cover rent for her and her kids. Brianna and Kyle. Word got around that her old friends had drifted away, unwilling to lend her money or deal with her constant complaints. The life they'd built on my support unraveled faster than I'd expected. I blocked their numbers after Mom's last pleading text, a move Joshua fully backed. "You've given them enough chances," he said one evening as we sat on our porch, watching Matthew and John chase each other in the yard. Sydney, checking in over coffee, agreed. "You protected your family's future," she said. "They made their choices." Her words rang true. I'd spent years believing family meant unconditional sacrifice, but their actions at the park showed me that loyalty shouldn't come at the cost of my children's dignity. The boys were thriving now, enrolled in a new swim club where they played freely with kids who didn't see them as different. Matthew, now more confident, told me he wanted to join a soccer team next. John, always the quieter one, started drawing pictures of our family Joshua, me, and them smiling under a bright sun. Seeing their joy cemented my decision. I felt no guilt, only a quiet strength in knowing I'd drawn a line for their sake. Looking back, I realized the real cost wasn't the $127,000 I'd given over the years. It was the time I spent ignoring the truth about my family's priorities. They saw my boys as lesser, my generosity as owed. Cutting them off wasn't just about money, it was about reclaiming respect for my children and myself. If you're watching this and facing a similar betrayal, know this: setting boundaries with toxic family isn't selfish, it's survival. Protect what matters most, and don't look back.